Ladies and gentlemen, this is Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Mark, Ostrander, Grant Turner, and it's a momentous day for us, boys. It's episode 300, so we'll talk about that at the end. Let's get right into it. Abel Stevenson coming back to college. Grant, as a guy that has a relationship with him and designed some awfully slick singlets for him at Final X. What are your thoughts on him coming back to the college landscape?
Well, I think from the outside, I mean, as a wrestling fan, it's going to be really cool to have Gable back in the collegiate scene with taking some time off. And once again, he ended with a amazing fireworks display in Detroit and, very memorable exit to the collegiate game, and now him potentially coming back to the collegiate game is really, really momentous. I think there's also a huge aspect of the NIL concept that I think could be a driving factor into that, and a lot of continued branding and all of the intrinsic things of him coming back to wrestling, also in a big way on the freestyle scene. Making the world team and being able to go to Belgrade, Serbia and compete. It's just going to benefit him tremendously on that branding side. So I'm excited to have him back in, even if it's for 5 duels and 2 tournaments, wherever he goes.
Yeah.
It's still going to be great.
And Mark, I want to get to you about how it affects the team scores, because it does, because he comes in obviously at the top of a weight. If you and I were doing rankings, we'd be insane not to rank that guy number 1. But GT is a guy that lives in the branding world, as a guy that's helping athletes on the male and female side be branded or improve their brand. I think it's interesting, like you're saying, because he stays in the limelight now, right? Like, whatever happens at Serbia, if he doesn't wrestle again until Final X, say, and I mean, 24 is up in the air, the spotlight is off of him. People move on to the next thing. That's how the world works. And now, I mean, NCAA wrestling is so good at building storylines, and he's obviously an unbelievably charismatic guy. It feels like this is tailor-made for him. And I don't know if sad's the right word, because I'm not 1/1000th as good as that guy was, but like college wrestling is not very hard for him, So, I mean, he's probably going to win. We can talk about whatever school he's going to end up, but whatever school he's going to end up, he's going to score 20 plus bonus, minus 1 point for popping the top, probably after the finals and pulling the singlets down. But I mean, this is a huge opportunity, like you're saying, for him to continue to stay in the forefront of wrestling fans' minds, right? And sell products.
Well, I think that's also part of it, is like as large as, let's say, Nick Lee is, senior world team member going to Serbia, best guy at 65 kilos in the U.S. He was extremely, in my opinion, was more relevant during his collegiate career at Penn State than he is now as a professional. Now, that's maybe like because of the collegiate aspect and all of the following. Like, once again, like, Mark, you would know a lot of guys that, like, when they were at the University of Iowa or Iowa State or, collegiately, and all of a sudden they go on and be amazing international athletes, their following diminished because they were no longer in the black and gold or the crimson and gold or whatever it is that their collegiate program was. So I think to that point, you keep more of an audience, because I think there's a bigger audience for the collegiate wrestling than there is international wrestling in the U.S. But how about this, though, for a heavyweight field, though? Senior freestyle member going to Serbia, senior Greco world team athlete going to Serbia, Colton Schultz.
Yeah.
Mason Paris, Final X, number 2, reigning national champion, Hodge Trophy winner. Wyatt Hendrickson coming back. Greg Kirkfleet coming back. Tony Cassiope, U23 world champion. Lucas Davidson. I mean, like, are you kidding me? Like, that could be one of the most talented heavyweight fields ever, with Gable being back in the mix.
And it's crazy because like Jack Elam was like a U20 world medalist, and he's like an afterthought. You know, like
Unreal.
He's the 7th or 8th guy on the board there. So I'll say this and then turn it over to you, Mark. I agree with you 100%, GT, and people don't like this saying, but I think people root for the laundry. And that's the Nick Lee is a perfect example when he's at Penn State. And you only have to go to like an Iowa versus Penn State duel versus like the attendance at the World Cup or stuff like that, or even like the World Cup in 2018 when it was in Carver. You know, you can't argue the quality of wrestling isn't better at the World Cup. And there's a fraction of the people there. So Marco, jump in here. Thoughts as the sage of our show.
Well, first of all, Grant, you made your point of what the heavyweight bracket could look like is spot on, minus one guy, because I don't think Paris is back next year. I think he's actually done with his wrestling career for collegiate style.
He owes Gable a Hodge, by the way.
True. But I think, Gable being out of the limelight for the last year because he hasn't really done anything with WWE. He hasn't been out there promoting, you don't see him on TV, because we would see it on social media if he was out there doing these things. So I think it's a good move in his situation for both him and WWE to get back into wrestling, to get his name out there. Will it hurt him if he doesn't win Worlds? I don't know. I don't know what kind of media that's going to do. Are people going to say, well, he hasn't really trained that hard. He hasn't spent much time. Give him another year. He's going to win the Olympics. And, if he's out there, that's what he's doing, building his brand. So I would love to see him come back wherever he goes. And I would assume, just me personally, that he'd be back at Minnesota because he has, great loyalty to those guys. They're still in his corner when he's wrestling. So, I couldn't see him going anywhere else. But, yeah, I'm more than excited to have him coming back.
One thing to touch on, just so people understand, the portal is actually closed. The exception to the portal being closed is if you graduated, and Gable graduated. So just so people understand that, because now we're going to talk about Caliendo and Franek to Iowa from NDSU. And they had the loophole of their coach left within the last 30 days. They go to Iowa, and now, there's a bunch of things layered here, but one thing is the guys that are at Iowa at those weight classes cannot transfer out in the portal unless they were seniors. But like Seabrick and Patrick Kennedy cannot leave. And depending on how they put their lineup together, you could see at Iowa, a portal guy at 25 with Cruz, Teskey's portal 33, Real Woods is portal 41, Voinovich is portal 49, Franek 57, and Caliendo 65. Their first 6 weights could be portal guys. And I think we were talking about this at junior duels, like almost every team that's up at the top has got 2 or 3 of these guys at least. Penn State's got Kirkfleet, who is a portal guy. And they just got Messenbrink, and they're going to start Nagao. And if Kurt McHenry started, everybody's got dudes like that. But it is interesting, and it certainly puts Iowa right back really in the fight for second place again. I think it feels like Penn State's going to win the tournament again. What reaction, Mark? Because I was in Oklahoma when I heard this, so the reaction had to be very different in Iowa. You got buddies there and message boards and all that stuff. What are the thoughts there?
Well, what I'm hearing, and this is just what I'm hearing, I have no knowledge personally about it because I don't know anybody really inside the program that's calling me and telling me these things. But I think they like to keep Kennedy at 65, move Caliendo up to 74, move Brands up to 84, move Assad up to 97, and then Cassiopeia at heavyweight. Is some people are saying that's probably how it's going to go.
Are you joking or serious?
No, I'm serious. Brands has wrestled 84 before.
Yeah, but he didn't win. Okay, I'm just making sure
he hadn't won a lot till this year at 74. Nobody predicted him to be an All-American this year at 74.
Okay, all right. You're not joking, seriously.
No, I'm not joking.
Okay, and which ones?
This is just things that I've heard
Which
kind of
one's
social
65,
media.
Caliendo or Kennedy?
I'm not sure, David. I think they're going to try to figure it out once they're in the room.
Okay. GT.
What do you think of that, Grant?
Yeah.
It's not a wild concept. I mean, at the time, Nelson was a top 10 84 pounder. Once again, he wasn't an All-American, but he was very serviceable at 184 pounds. So I don't necessarily have a problem with the brands aspect of that 84. I mean, he is a returning All-American at 74. It's hard to like whatever it is, but if you're trying to win a team title, and once again, as a collective unit at Iowa, maybe that is the best scenario for their squad to put either a Caliendo or Kennedy at 65, 74 for a team race. Especially for duels, it'd probably be better. I'm not sure. I mean, Abe Assad is not a very tall 184 pounder. 97 got a lot tougher with Brooks going up to 97. I think Hidlay's going up to 97 as well.
And Buchanan's back. Yeah.
And Buchanan's back. I think also 84 lost a lot of guys.
Yeah. I'm looking at 84 real quick, GT, just to make your point, and then I'll get out of your way. 5 All-Americans return, but 2 of them move up. So it's Keckheisen, Munoz, and Kane, which is 2, 6, 8. So go ahead with your point.
84, I mean, and once again, 84 is not a weak weight. It's just that it's been vacated by a lot of top-level talent. So got a returning All-American at 74 that's already been proficient at 84.
Yeah.
Maybe they see a hole there. Once again, Patrick Kennedy was a 6 seed at the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Michael Caliendo only had 5 or 6 losses on the year, all of them to national champions. You know, Carr, O'Toole, Griffith.
Yeah.
Very, very, very talented kid. And if you haven't watched a lot of Michael Caliendo's matches, the man is a dog. Like, he's really good. He's a freshman. They got him for another 3 years. Also, my boy, Jared Franick, which is, you guys know, I picked him for 3 years.
Oh, so we already know the 57 picks. Mark's got Chittum. You got Franick.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to pick Franick to All-American every single year. So, but I think to Mark's point, it's not that absurd to think about. I mean, it's absurd to kind of theorize that that might be an option, but outside looking in, you got a lot of talent in that room that could make that. They got to figure out how to make that lineup work.
I'll tell you what, it's fascinating to me. I didn't think about it at all. I've always in the back of my mind thought Ferrari's going to be there 97, but we haven't heard anything. I think, just because, I mean, I think if you've ever met Mr. Ferrari, the family likes to stay together. And if 2 of the 3 are committed there, it seems fairly likely that's where AJ would end up. But again, we don't know anything about his legal situation. I think you guys have sort of convinced me Nelson Brands would be fine at 84. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but Mark, you saying he was top 10, and then GT, you pointing out that the weight vacates, and there's nothing wrong with saying some weights are not as deep as others. That's not a criticism to anybody who wrestles. It's just, if some weight brings back 9 All-Americans and some weight brings back 3, you're probably going to have 5 new All-Americans at the second weight. So, I mean, I looked at that weight because a Colton Hawks from Missouri right now is ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's ranked 7 with those 2 guys moving out. So, I mean, if Nelson Brands moved in here, I think we would rank him second or third, probably behind Munoz, who took 6th, because Munoz got hurt at that weight. I mean, it's a toss-up, right? 5th at 74 versus 6th at 84, but he's in the 2-3 line. Doesn't say bunch. I mean, you have literally a potential finalist there, which is kind of nuts. And Abe Assad is ranked 9th. He's on that same line, R24, round of 24 guys with Whitlake, Pinto, Malchewski, etc. I think the hard part for them is 97 with Assad or Colby Franklin. But you've got me convinced 57, 65, 74, 84 is better. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think a lot of us were surprised Kennedy didn't place at nationals. I mean, he's a freshman. That happens, but he had a really good season. He reminds me of so much of Marinelli and just like how his literally physical stature and how he looks and same weight class and all that stuff, but he's a guy that's on his own, has had a really good career so far. So, I'm just looking to peek real quick where he'd be at 65. He was in the round of 16. They just have freaking 7 returning All-Americans in that weight. But Shane Griffith moves out, so there's 6 of them. And then he 7, 8, 9, and then 10. But Caliendo is one of the guys ahead of him. So super interesting. I mean, you're probably right, Mark. I mean, I don't mean that like I'm surprised. Like, you're right all the time.
No, you're surprised, David, because the look on your face when I said it, you almost fell off your chair. So
I'm not surprised that you're right. I'm surprised that I didn't even think of this idea. No, I mean, I'm really surprised.
And David, again, I'm not saying this is going to happen. Hopefully, I'll get some information next Monday when I play in the Hawkeye Wrestling Club outing with my son.
Subtle flex.
Next week, Monday. So I'll get to talk to Morningstar and some of the guys like that and kind of see what their, plans are, because they're people are going to want to know what's going on. And I'm sure Tom and Terry are going to let something slip and say something. It'll be out on social media. So, but yeah, I mean, it's great that they got the 2 guys from North Dakota. I think they're going to fit in just fine. They both love to just go out and compete. They're like a dog with a bone when they get out there. So it's kind of a perfect fit for the style that Iowa has. So I don't know what's going to happen. I could understand them leaving their lineup like it is, and then just, hey, you want to wrestle, you got to beat the guy in front of you out. And that's kind of how Iowa's always been. They've always brought in good guys. If you want to make the team, you got to beat the guy. They know that coming in. So that's how you get to be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But the more I think about it, the more your idea makes a lot more sense. I mean, Kobe Franklin's really good, but I think, and maybe that's what happened. Maybe Assad gets pushed out and it's a Assad Kobe Franklin wrestle off, at 97, especially if Ferrari doesn't come in for a year, depending on what happens. So the other sort of staffing news of the week was Austin O'Connor to Illinois. For people that don't know, he's from Illinois, from the Chicagoland area. So he goes back. The rumor I heard was that Ed Ruth is moving out of the country with his wife to Croatia. Heard that down at Junior Duels. So I don't know if that's true or not. So just my opinion. I'm not putting it out there as facts. But what is true is Austin O'Connor's on staff. And it's been a good couple of weeks for University of Illinois with Bronigal making the Greco team, Zane Richards pulling probably arguably the biggest upset of the freestyle Final X on the men's side, and had Medlin and him on last week. So GT, you and I talked about how kind of underrated Austin O'Connor was. Won nationals, and the next year was basically wrestling on one leg, but never talked about it. So he took like 7th or 8th. Comes back and wins in a dominant fashion in the finals against Levi Haynes. I think we kind of slept on him a little bit because of that injured year, and then the first year he kind of had that, let's just say, less than dominant win over Sasso in the finals. I mean, he won, but, some 50-50 calls and stuff like that. How big of a get is this for Illinois to get O'Connor?
I think once again, you add a 2-time national champion to your staff or even in your room, you're going to get, some of that residual, confidence and technique rub off that O'Connor brings to it. I think also just, he's young enough to wrestle with the kids too. I think also being back in Illinois for him is going to be a big deal. And I think just the Illinois RTC with putting 2 guys on the world team, kind of, for lack of a better term, both of them kind of a little bit of surprises.
For sure.
I would say probably, but to those guys, it's they don't really have a lot of RTC athletes. So it's a big showcase for both of those athletes and Medlin and what's going on in Illinois, getting a brand new wrestling room, basically like kind of changing the culture there a little bit.
Yeah.
With Mike coming back as the head coach. So, I mean, it's a big deal to have AOC there. I think it's going to be a big draw for athletes, and it's going to be a good thing for the coaching staff.
He's a very charismatic dude. I think the kids really like him. The rumor was he was going to go fight MMA. So it's interesting that I don't know if he'll try to do both. I mean, there's different roles there. Like, I don't know if he's one of the recruiting coaches, like, because if he's recruiting, then you got to be making phone calls. Hard to do that at night and then, be coaching and doing MMA. But your point, GT, about him being in really good shape. I mean, clearly he just won the Nationals in March, so he's probably still pretty peak condition. So, Marco, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, you got, to me, anybody coming out of college going right into a coaching position at another school, we've all done it. And, I don't know everybody, but I did it right out of college. I was the assistant coach at UNO. So it's a different feel. You're trying to work with kids nonstop, trying to help them get their weight down, making sure they're going to class. And, they have to have some respect for you. And I think he's going to bring that to Illinois with him. I think the kids that are in the program are going to respect what he's done on the mat. So they're going to listen to him. So
I think Illinois is one of those programs, and we've talked about this several times. I think us, but even before when I was talking to the other guys that used to do this with me, Illinois is a program that for some reason, the University of Illinois, the best in-state kids in a lot of sports don't go there. I don't know why. It's got to be something that is bigger than wrestling. But if you kept all the best kids in football in Illinois, they'd be in a New Year's Day bowl game every year. And the same with wrestling. You look at all, I mean, they just won Fargo, junior duels rather, which we're going to talk about. Like, if you just kept the best kids, look at all the guys we're talking about, like Caliendo's from Illinois, Cassiope's from Illinois, Jacob Warner's from Illinois. Like, that's been a state that, people are not scared to go in and try to recruit. Where I'm in Missouri keeps most of those good kids in state. Iowa, very few top flight kids leave Iowa and don't go to Iowa, Iowa State, or UNI. And so if Illinois can work on closing the borders a little bit more and having a local guy do it that's there, even though he won at a different school, like, listen, I know the formula. I just did it. That could have big ramifications for them. So I spent last week at Junior Duels. The tournament is growing by leaps and bounds. There's now girls Greco. The number of girls teams, I think, doubled in one tournament and quadrupled, I think, in the other tournament. Crazy stuff. Couple of shout outs. The junior girls was won by Missouri, and it's the first time Missouri has won a junior duels title in boys, girls, etc. Greco freestyle. So shout out to Scott Cutbirth, our state director on the girls side, Pat Ream, is our overall state director, Amon Prater, Bobby Herrick, that coaching staff. Angelina Vargas got voted USA Wrestling Athlete of the Week. I think she went like 17-0 or something crazy like that in both styles. So on the junior boys side, very interesting. On Illinois won their pool. They beat Iowa in essentially what became the semifinals. And then there was a rock, paper, scissors on the other side where Oklahoma, Wisconsin, and Ohio were in it. So I don't know if you guys know this. I thought that the criteria was, like, if it's us three, you take the cumulative of the net of the three duels. Like, let's say Grant is a +10 and Mark is a +5 and I'm a -16, then Grant goes. That's not the criteria. What they do is they do that and they eliminate the bottom team and then they go head-to-head on the top two teams. So even though Wisconsin had the highest net, the head-to-head came up with Ohio, and Ohio had beaten them, so they went. And it was an awesome duel. Called it with Hardell. Shout out to Hardell Moore. Shout out to Shannon Gillespie and Ike Anderson on the Greco. And GT, I don't know if you watched the Greco, but it was hilarious. They were warning guys for passivity, and Ike took his headset and started yelling at the officials that was offense, and you cannot call that, and you are slowing down the growth of Greco-Roman wrestling in America. So there's not too many firsts left in my life, and that was a first. And he's such a nice guy. I think he just kind of took it. Illinois won by 10. I think it was 39-29, but something like that. They wrestled 13 of the 15 matches or 12 of the 14 matches, whatever it was. And then they forfeited 2. But Illinois is back. They looked really good. There's a big leader for them. Ohio's got some really tough kids, Jackson Joy, Omar Ayub, just a bunch of those guys. But the grind of that tournament is real. Did you guys, either one of you guys, get a chance to watch any of it?
A little bit via Twitter, but I didn't watch any of the streams, but I kept up with it on the phone.
I got to watch Iowa wrestle a couple times. So I saw part of the Greco where they lost to Illinois and Greco. And then I watched them wrestle the Oklahoma schools. So
yeah. Iowa actually looked really good. They beat essentially the Stillwater Bixby Oklahoma team and then lost to Illinois. So, but good, really well done by USA Wrestling. Awesome tournament, and some kids got a lot of freaking matches in if you did both styles. So, other thing is the Oklahoma University, the assistant coaches were there in full effect. So, definitely out there recruiting and trying to get on it right away. All the Oklahoma coaches that I'm friends with said they've already made the rounds, like gone by and visited, high school / club practices. And Austin Marsden wrestled at Oklahoma State. Cam Sakura just got mentioned in Willie's article as one of the best recruiters in the country. So they're out there. And then big shout to David Bray. There's like 5 or 6 teams left, and we wanted to get the rankings to use for the finals. And I literally in like 15 minutes pulled up every single kid from all 6 states and where they were ranked, which allowed Hardell and I to do a better job on the finals. So shout out to Flo and David Bray for that. So, all right, new college rules. We're finally going to get there, boys. Let's see. Where is this? Present a tab. All right, so I think what I'd like to do, if you guys are cool with this, is kind of go from the ones that are not super impactful or changes to the ones that are. So weight certifications for all institutions permitted to begin September 1. GT, when was the normal time that they were supposed to start? Like September 15, October 1 or something?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so they moved it up, which I don't think changes a lot. True placement matches in a tournament will not alter the final team score. That's actually a really good rule. Like, you should not be getting, pin points, or if somebody defaults out, getting extra points for that. All right. As the 2 members of our show that can grow facial hair, and one of us very, very quickly, the facial hair rule, which limited wrestlers to beards of no longer than 1/2 inch in length, has been eliminated. I assume GT and Mark, you guys are for that rule?
Back when I was competing in college, it didn't matter. So now as an adult, yeah, of course, I would love to have my, but I think this is a easy rule for low hanging fruit to eliminate it.
Yeah, because you can imagine somebody's getting out there with a freaking ruler, like measuring people's beards and whether or not. And I remember guys who used to have to shave like at weigh-ins if the referee said, they get people with toilet paper stuck to their faces and stuff like that. Mark, I'm sure you've had an episode or 2 of that as a coach.
Yep. We had kids that had to cut their hair because back then you couldn't be lower than the collar. So, yeah.
Yeah. Officials can now let action continue after penalizing an illegal hold and not require stoppage after imminent scoring finishes when the safety of wrestlers is not in danger. Basically that's a continuation rule, which I think is good, right? Like if I try to pull Grant's fingers off and he still lifts me and puts me to the back, I somehow saved myself 4 points by doing something illegal, and that's no longer the case. So I think that's pretty cut and dry and good. Standard weigh-ins across all competition types will move to 2 hours or sooner rather than 2 hours and 1 hour. I think that's if nothing else, that probably just makes sure nobody screws up getting on time or early or late for weigh-ins. Okay, here's the first one that's probably worthy of a deep dive discussion. The first medical forfeit of a tournament will count as a loss on the wrestler's record unless the medical forfeit occurs immediately following an injury default. So just to say this out loud and let you guys go at it. So eventually, like, let's say I'm in the Big 10s, Big 12s, whatever, and I make the semis, but I won the quarters. And then I go, okay, well, I did enough to hold my seat at nationals. I'm going to default out. That's now going to count as a loss. Now, if I got hurt wrestling in the quarters and somehow won, then I could default. Or if I got hurt and then was on the backside, I could default out and only the injury loss would count. Either way, it's like you're going to take a loss now if there's a medical default. Either you're going to take, well, I guess that's not true. You could get injury the match before. No. It has to be. You have to take because it's an injury default. So you have to default. There's going to be a loss now. So there's been a lot of manipulation about this, and it's affected the seeding of the national tournament for years because the loss, to kind of take this forward, the loss counts on your win-loss record and it counts on your RPI. So like if I'm not very good, but Grant medically forfeits to me, that affects his RPI because it becomes a part of his record, and I'm now one of his opponents. And then if I have a bad record, that's my opponent's record and all that stuff. So, Marco, you can go first. Thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. It's one of the rules that I actually kind of like because we never really could understand what counted, what didn't. When we were doing the rankings, David, I remember we'd say, yeah, but he lost by medical forfeit, and then we'd try to figure out, well, he was winning the match by 10 points and got hurt and lost. So does it really count? Well, yeah, it will count now. So, yeah, I have no problems with that rule.
And before I jump to you, GT, it still might be that way for people ranking. Like I could see that, like if you're beating me, Mark, by 12 and you get hurt, I probably would keep you, ranked above me, but it's going to change, your record.
Yep.
So GT, I don't know if this affects NAI at all, and probably not, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you guys will adopt a lot of these same rules, but as a guy that's still in the corner, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's pretty standard. I mean, I think it just standardizes that process rather than whatever it is. Like you're going to wind up with a loss. And I mean, I don't necessarily have a huge issue with this. I also think that it's like, if that's truly how it works, I think everybody would be fine with it. I don't think anyone will really gripe about this rule. As far as like, I mean, I think we'll all take it into consideration for, seeding. We'll take it in for RPI. I mean, like it'll just be like, hey, this is what it is, and we move forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that it really affects you in tournaments, like in dual meets. Here's the other thing. Like, let's say, like, hey, a dual meet is sewn up, and so I'm not going to wrestle my heavyweight against Mark because we're going to lose. Well, I guess that doesn't change anything. It still counts as a loss, but we're like, well, I think we could have won the match, but we didn't need to because we definitely wouldn't have pinned him. Well, now it's going to count as a loss for sure if you choose to follow that. So I think that's one that makes sense, and it's basically just designed to prevent manipulation of people just taking medical forfeits when they don't want to wrestle. The next one, the penalty for a delayed coach's video challenge request will be changed from a control of mat violation and team point deduction to a loss of the video review request. So basically, instead of giving a warning and taking a team point, they're just going to take your brick. Now, I've always wondered at NCAAs because the NCAA, you get X number of lost bricks depending on how many people you have entered in the tournament. In a duel, it's pretty standard. I think it's one per match. So again, and we're in full brick season in freestyle and Greco. This probably makes more sense, right? Like it doesn't carry over to other matches. Like, all right, like I'm older than Grant, so I'll say I'm coaching him, and I think he got hosed, and then, well, I'm going to wait because he might come out of the other side of it, and then he doesn't come out of the other side of it. Now I try to throw a brick, and they go, no, it's too late. I think the question here will be is, because they can just let you take it back. Like maybe Grant, you're my wrestler, and you go take it back. It's too late, because there's a lot of those. You can kick the brick back, like you have to confirm it with the wrestler. And I mean, the referee could actually tell you, like, listen, it's 20 seconds later, we're not going to look at it. And so then it almost becomes like a non-punishable brick, right? Which means probably people will throw even more bricks if that's how referees interpret it. Is that at least one variation of how this could go?
I think so. I think also just like the video review stuff in general, I think it's, you need to challenge when you need to challenge. And, very similar in like freestyle and Greco right now, there's a point of throughout the action, like, you only have so long to be able to throw the brick after the action is completed. I think, yeah.
So, Marco, what do you think about this? And it's kind of tied to the next one, which we'll talk about. So I'll say the next one, you can kind of combine them. Video review will now provide the referee with the authority to confirm or overturn all calls or missed calls during a video review challenge sequence rather than a single move. And that's actually way easier for the coach, because we've all talked about this, and I've been in corners recently enough to be like, what are we actually challenging? Like, well, I think this is wrong and this is wrong. Well, which one am I more likely to win? Now it's like, listen, you guys scored it 2 blue, 1 red, and I just think that's wrong. And they'll go back through and review the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably a rule that should have been in a long time ago. So, I still think we're going to have issues, David, because we're going to come up to a couple other rules changes. And when you're talking a second, when we get into the near fall and you're talking a 2 count for 2 points and 3 points for 3 seconds and then 4 points for 4 seconds, there's going to be bricks going all over the place. You're going to see that mat full of rubber bricks because they're going to say, no, it was 4 seconds. No, you need to go back and look at it. And it's just going to go nuts.
Yeah, I think this will result in probably longer matches. Cardio becomes a little less important. The other thing, if you're kind of trying to massage the rules, are you can throw this, and even if the riding time is off by 2 seconds because of what happened, then that's a 1 challenge. And you can like have your guy catch a breather if you need it, or something like that. Any of those things, like when was control established? Like, well, okay. Like I can argue, if somebody needs a lunger, and I go, I think we got the takedown 2 seconds earlier. Or they didn't start the riding time right on time. So there's going to be, trust me, these coaches, most of them are not like my dad was, like teaching full time. Like they're going to be sitting here figuring out how to manipulate that to their advantage. So the next one is so interesting to me. The hand touch takedown has been eliminated, meaning all takedowns, in order to be secured, would require a demonstration of control beyond reaction time. This is probably, in my opinion, a good rule, but it's probably going to result in so much interpretation, because what is control? What is reaction time? Guys are so good now when they hit the mat. If I lift Grant, he's immediately grabbing, hip heisting, squaring up, cutting back. The old days of just, okay, well, I'm going to give up the 2 and then try to get the 1 are basically over now. People are diving to ankles and everything else. Mark, go ahead. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I don't know how this is going to play out. I love the hand touch where they could slow it down and see that his hand touched and the guy was in control, and that was 2 points. This continuation, I think, it's just going to put a lot more pressure on the officials to make the perfect call. When do I call it? When does the continuation stop? Where's he at in that position of the match? It's just, I don't think we needed to add some more rules to it, because once you've landed on all 4s or 3-point contact on the mat, it should be considered a takedown. So, I think maybe this one's going to be really hard to break down during the year.
So GT, you're in the corner. I'm assuming you're telling those guys as soon as you hit the mat, start scrambling, right?
My personal thought is that, like, you've now opened this up for interpretation.
Yeah.
That's my initial thought is that now you're making the official's job even harder to require a demonstration of control beyond reaction time. Not only have we now just eliminated basically just the entire conversation by, hey, listen, this hand touch is over, or whatever it is. You're now saying you have to have control and it has to be outside of reaction time. So now there's two aspects of a takedown that are now in play that once again, like, I mean, you already would have in hand touch, you would already had to have been in control in order to have a hand touch. So it like takes that completely out of the conversation. And then once again, there is no reaction time. So you're just basically taking half of the argument and throwing it in the trash. Now, both of those have now become an argument. Well, was he in control and was there reaction time? So yeah, I mean, if I'm coaching against this particular situation, everything is a scramble now. Like I'm not giving up anything. I'm trying to wrestle through positions even more so now than previous because the demonstration of control beyond reaction time is very ambiguous now.
Yeah, it takes me to, there's two specific matches that immediately come to mind for me. One is the Ethan Laird Max Dean match that Laird upset Max Dean early in the year because there was a hand touch, and we talked about it. Like Max Dean starts a Granby, but he put his hand down for a second, and like technically that's the right call. Then there was the Levi Haynes Peyton Robb call at the Big Tens, I believe the finals, where it was the same call, but it looked like the same thing, but they didn't call it. And so if that was subject to interpretation, I think this is going to be really, really hard for subject interpretation. So the current mandatory 5-second count for waist and ankle rides will now include all situations in which the top wrestler grasps the bottom wrestler's ankle. I think that's where it's going to come a lot like, hey, I started on top and you scrambled out and now I got an ankle. And I'm not even stalling, but like I'm on a leg. I'm going to have to work very quickly to climb up, or you're going to see a lot more stalling calls or a lot more escapes. So the next rule, the rule which states top position wrestlers must only aggressively work to break down the opponent, will change to also require him to work to pursue near fall points and or a pin. And this is a quote from Coleman Scott. The way it's been in the rule book, and we changed that a little bit, is an attempt to break down. That's what guys were doing, so it wasn't technically stalling, but that's hard to watch for me. I watched the sport for 30 years. I want guys to be vicious on top and want to turn. If you're not incentivized to, why do it? So, I mean, that's probably the rationale for it. Again, and GT, you go first on this. To me, this feels like subjectivity, right? Like I can throw a cross-face cradle and act like I'm trying to get it, or I can be like trying to get a wrist, which is technically the beginning of a 2-on-1 tilt. And now it's super subjective on whether or not I'm actually trying to turn or not, right?
Yeah, I mean, once again, you have a full-grown man trying to stop you from doing what you're trying to do on top. I mean, this is it's a very difficult. Like, I'm not going to give you my wrist just so that like you can be proficient on top. Like, I'm going to defend you. So, I mean, how is that like epic struggle between like him trying on top to defense underneath? You know, it just opens it up for a conversation about like intent. And it's just problematic.
Yeah, I always think, before I get to you, Mark, I always think like in business, results matter, and in personal relationships, intent matters, right? You know, like that's the bottom line. You know, in business, it's like, well, you asked me to do something, did I get it done? You know, as a friend, like even if I didn't make the dinner reservation, if I tried really hard or truly forgot, it's a lot more forgivable. So, Mark, what do you think about this before we go to near falls and takedowns?
I agree with Grant 100%. It's just bringing in more things that, excuse me, it's going to be harder to determine what's going on. But I understand why they wanted the rule in there, because there are some schools that, can ride an ankle and just sit on it, and they'll be throwing their arms around, but they're really not trying to do anything. They're just trying to control the situation. So I guess I can see it both ways. I guess we're going to find out. Everything, is going to be learning as we go, obviously, with some of the new rules, how they're going to work out, because I'm sure by the end of next year, we're going to be looking at these rules again and say, well, this did not work, obviously, because, they called it one way here and called it another way here.
Yeah. And I think the rules can be changed every 2 years, if I'm not correct, but maybe I'm wrong on that. But you're right. I think some of these are going to get reviewed. And some of the people even said, listen, we're trying stuff and we don't like it. We can always go back. So the next thing, which you mentioned, Mark, 2 swipes is 2, 3 swipes is 3, 4 swipes is 4. I frankly, I agree with that. We were talking about the team scoring of junior duels, and it's nuts to me that the net result of Grant beating me 2-0 is the same as if he beats me 11-2, or I'm sorry, 12-2. So 12-2 is 4-1 and 2-0 is 3-0. It's net 3. To me, that doesn't seem like it should make sense. So, I think the near fall thing is whether you like it or not, they're going to do it. It's just, I think you're going to have a lot of people throwing YOLO bricks. Was it technically 3 seconds or was it 2.8? They're going to have to run a timer from when the guy originally. Here's where I think it gets real subject to interpretation. Grant puts me in a tilt, and the ref, because there's a rule too now. If he throws me right to my back, I don't have to start swiping. I can go look for the fall, which is actually the referee can go look for the fall, which he's supposed to do. So. I think now you're going to look at the clock and say, hey, at 24.6 seconds left is when David's back was in criteria, and this is what it was. Do you guys, what else do you see coming out of this, GT?
Well, I also I feel for the wrestling officials in these scenarios.
Yeah.
Now, once again, they have a hard enough job as it is, and once again, some people may not think that way, and whatever it is, but the referee's got a tough gig, especially with a lot of this subjective, whatever it is. Now every single time you go for a near fall, you're not going to be happy with the result. Was it 2? Was it 3? Was it 4?
Yeah.
So once again, I just think at the national tournament in tight matches where it's 1 point could be the difference. All of a sudden, you got referee Tim and referee John and referee Bob, and Bob is slow as molasses when he's calling back points, and Tim's going 100 miles an hour. It just depends on what official you get at what match and what position, and it's tough, right? So as much as you try to standardize, near fall or whatever it may be, this makes it even on an elevated platform for arguments to occur and challenges to occur. Was it 2? Was it 3? Was it 4 seconds? Because it could be the difference in the match.
I think at the Nationals, it would be the difference in a lot of matches. And I think the only time people are going to be okay is if you hold me on my back for 10 seconds. Okay, we can all agree that was 4. So that's the statistical anomaly. People are, and the other thing is if I'm flopping back and forth, did I get out of criteria for a second? Does the count restart?
I just think that we're making the referee's job even more difficult with some of these rules, and not just particularly on the back points thing. Am I making a larger point of this? I just think that it's going to be very hard to get it right all the time.
Yeah, I agree. Marco?
Yeah, this is where I think you're just going to have bricks going every which way. I think coaches from other teams may even take their brick and walk by the mat and throw his brick out there too, because they're not sure it's going to look like a bunch of kids playing in one of those little pits at the McDonald's with all those little balls in there, and they'll have to clear all the balls out just to find the kid at the bottom. So I just think it's going to be too hard to justify it, especially in big matches. there will be video review, and it will take a little while to do it, obviously, and it's just going to slow the match down.
Yeah. All right. So 2 last things. One is the 3-point rule, but before that, the riding time rule did not get implemented. And it was funny because I had a conversation with Mark about this, GTR. I was like, what are they going to do in the ride outs if riding time doesn't count unless you turn somebody? So like you get to the 2s and then you go to the 30-30s. Well, it used to be like if you rode me for 20 and I rode you for 15, you win. Well, now it doesn't matter, because who's turning anybody? I mean, last time somebody turned somebody in overtime was Tony Ramos against Tyler Graff in the national finals. Like that just doesn't happen. So I'm glad. I mean, that was not thought out all the way through. I know a lot of people are upset with riding time, and that's probably another conversation. So obviously the last one's a 3-point takedown. I've thought about this a bunch of different ways, and I'm going to let you guys go. But here's my main thought. It becomes a lot more like freestyle, because if Grant takes me down and doesn't turn me in freestyle, it's 2-0 and we're back on our feet. Now it's 3-1. It's net 2 instead of net 1. And we talk about this all the time on commentary. Like if he's used to having a 6-point lead in folk style, I got to get a lot of 2s and 1s to come back. In freestyle, it's just three takedowns. And depending on the criteria, I might be winning at 6-6. So, GT, thoughts?
I have to be very professional now. I think this rule doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
I personally think that a 3-point takedown is not going to increase action. It's just increasing the points on the board. I think I think also just in general, like, okay, let's say you sneak a takedown at the end of a period, let's say you 3-1, now all of a sudden it's 6-1 and you got 2 takedowns. Like, what's to incentivize the wrestler that's already up 6-1 to continue to wrestle? I mean, you're up by 5.
Right.
And, once again, I don't want to necessarily slam it before it gets implemented, because I could be completely and utterly wrong, and maybe more points means more action, and more points, whatever it is, means more. But I think it's going to wind up creating a higher scoreboard point value with not as much wrestling that occurs. So it's going to be 12-6, but it's going to be the exact same score as it would have been, or it would have been the same type of match. It would have been like 6-4. But because of the rule, or because of the point value being different, it's going to look like it's a bigger match. But once again, I could be completely wrong. My initial knee-jerk reaction to when I first heard it is that like this doesn't necessarily equate to more offensive action. It's just going to be higher point values.
Marco?
Grant, I'm so glad you said this, because I thought I'd be the only one on the podcast to think this is a ridiculous rule. I don't like it. Might as well just change all sports, and let's have a touchdown in football worth 9 points. What is the difference? We want more scoring. We want the totals to be higher. What is the difference? I mean, we've went through our whole lives for over 100 years in wrestling that it was a 2-point takedown. Why would
not 100 years? So just so you know, Tadaka,
how many years?
Not 100. Tadaka Hata came on the podcast and said, and GT, I know you're very good friends with him, that it used to be that the first takedown was worth 2 and every subsequent takedown was worth 1. So they've changed it. But yeah, for like the last probably 40 years, it's been 2 for a takedown.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't see the benefit. Maybe after we do this for a while, I'll kind of go over to the other side. But, the old philosophy, David, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. Well, I understand we're trying to get more people interested in wrestling. I understand the viewership was down this last year at the national tournament, which totally amazes me because it was one of the best national tournaments that I've ever seen. And I've been around for quite a while. So, you know, you can go through matches and say, well, how many matches would that have changed from the last 10 years at the national tournament if we would have had 3-point takedowns? And I think you're going to have a really hard time finding a lot of changes in the matches. So why would you change it? So I guess that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to play devil's advocate, but for the record, I agree with you guys. Okay. So like the point I'm going to make now is not quite as compelling as because I don't believe in it, but like with the near fall change last year and this, you can be 6 points out and win the match with a big move. It used to be 5, a 2+3, then it was 2+4. Now it's a 3+4. So I think the idea is, okay, well, GT's beating David 7-2 or 7-1, but he's still in it. Like if he could get one big move or, you know, he could win. He could win 8-7. Go ahead, GT.
So I totally agree with, like, let's say bombing a dude with a lat drop is now 7 points.
Right.
Okay. Or throwing a headlock and you get a big move. It's a way bigger move than it's ever been before. We're up to 7 rather than 6. Previously it was 5.
Right.
So in the words of my homie Austin Gomez, scared money don't make money. If you want 7 points, go get yourself some money, right?
Scared money don't make money, yeah.
But I think I do like incentivizing. So like I'm a big freestyle guy, as you guys know. And I'm a big Greco guy, as you guys know. You're incentivized for high amplitude throws, 5-point throws, big lifts, big throws in Greco. And in freestyle, you can get 5 as well. But also feet to back is 4. You know, so it's a takedown basically plus exposure, you know, so you can get some high amplitude attempts and techniques, right?
And that 4 is helpful in criteria versus 2 2s. So it's really like 4.5, like you're saying. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it incentivizes you to go big. I mean, or like with takedowns or whatever it is. So, but freestyle just made the jump to, I believe, one of the best point scoring systems that we've had in a very long time is the current system with the 2-point takedown, 4-point amplitude throw, consecutive leg laces, and the push out. You know, I mean, once again, still not a perfect system, but I believe that it's probably the best freestyle rules that we've ever had.
Now, and takedowns used to be 1 over there too for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it was 3 for exposure, like way back in the day.
Yeah.
And you know, all these other things. So if we're going to incentivize, I mean, once again, to all my Greco heads out there, go bomb somebody and get yourself 7 points, and then, you know, once again, you're incentivized to be able to do those type of things, especially if you're a good thrower. Most of those throws wind up in back point scenarios. So 3-point takedown plus you hold them there for 3 seconds, all of a sudden you're at 6.
Yeah.
If you hold them there for a lot longer, you're up by 7. Think about that. You're in the third period. You got 20 seconds left. Somebody goes big and throws a bomb. 7-point differential. That's 1 point away from a major decision, gentlemen.
Right.
So,
gentlemen and David.
But let's say that you're up by 1 and you bomb a dude. That's a major decision for the team and the duel.
Yeah. I think that might be one of the incentives, right? Is like if you're winning 6-1 in folk style with the old rules, you're like, well, I'm not going to cut him, take him. I got to cut him 6-2, take him down 8-2, cut him 8-3, take him down 8-3 or 10-3, and then get my riding time. I got to do it twice. Where now it's like, no, I can just cut him, take him down, ride him out, and get there. You know, so I think if you're trying to, again, I'm kind of with you guys, but if you're trying to make the argument for the losing guy, one big move is worth more now. So you're less out of it, you know, than you were from like 2-3 years ago, from 5, now 6, now 7, like GT said. And on the winning side or leading side, if you're leading, the tech's a lot easier, right? Like, and you know, now, I mean, like I had a match at the Big 12s 2.5 years ago where Josh Edmond was wrestling Jared Dagan. I literally said this at the end of the first period. It was 10-5 Josh Edmond. He had 5 takedowns, and he's not a rider. And Jared Dagan's like 6'19", if you don't know, and Josh Edmond's like 5'4". And I'm like, listen, if Dagan gets one takedown to his back, this can be really bad for Edmond because he doesn't ride, and Dagan can ride. Sure enough, he got like a 2 and a 2 or a 2 and a 4. I think it was 2 and a 4. Got an escape 10-6. It's 12-6 or 12-10 now. Edmond doesn't get out. He picks neutral, gets one takedown. It's 12-12. Dagan gets away and wins 13-12. And it's literally 6 takedowns to 1. And again, now that's a statistical outlier. That's an anomaly. Okay. I don't think you change rules based on that one match. And I'm not saying that was the criteria, but those things are less likely to happen if it's 3-1 versus 2-1, because at the end of the first period, it's a 10-point gap instead of a 5-point gap. So, I mean, I think that's essentially the difference. So we'll see. It's going to be fun. And as usual, there's going to be some guys coaching to the rules that we haven't really thought of yet, some tricks that are coming out. So we said at the top of the show, this is episode 300. So I just want to thank publicly Justin Tritz at Track Wrestling for getting us on the air, Mark Ostrander for helping me. This was originally just a rankings podcast, and for helping me behind the scenes for so many years and finally got his name where it deserved as the co-ranking person. Andy Hamilton for doing this with me, Alex Steen, Marcus Hain, and you guys. I've been blessed to talk wrestling with really probably everybody on the show is smarter than me. So it's nice to be Robin, nice to be sitting shotgun and let the smart guys talk. And I feel like that's what I do most weeks is just serve up volleyballs and let you guys hit them out. So thanks to everybody. And thank you, Gary Abbott, for bringing us over. It's nice being, and then between that and the Track Flow merger, I got a lot easier to talk about all the events we wanted to. So, if you guys want to say anything about 300, please feel free. Marco?
Yeah, it's been fun. We're keeping wrestling. Hopefully people are interested in the sport still, and we're getting it out there on social media. And that's, really the reason we're doing it is because we love the sport. Our opinions may not matter that much, obviously, to some people, but, we're trying to keep the sport relevant. So that's what this is all about, keeping the sport relevant.
DT, as the representative not only of Freestyle and Greco, but of Nike on this podcast, your thoughts?
I'm excited about, being a part of what you guys have already built and started. I'm probably, I can't remember, maybe 50 episodes of what you guys have been able to offer. So, once again, wrestling's an amazing sport. We have an amazing partner in USA Wrestling. We have an amazing partner in Gary Abbott that gives us the ability to talk wrestling and give our opinions to a massive audience. And once again, I think that it's really cool to continue to elevate the sport. And I hope that we do that with our presentation of what we do. And I hope that the opinions of us three resonate with a lot of the wrestling community. And it's always great to have that discussion, and I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, I just reiterate what you guys are saying. It's a blessing to be able to talk about it. It's a blessing that people can, you'll have people call or text you and be like, hey, I saw that. Well, did you guys really agree on this or whatever? And again, Mark said it right. We're not setting the rules. We're not creating policy, but hopefully somebody's a little bit smarter when they're watching a match with their friends, or they're out watching something that they picked up on something. And if nothing else, like Mark today has pointed out what Iowa's lineup could be next year, which is something that I learned. So those are the nuggets that we're hoping we're bringing everybody. And I just want to thank everybody again and for watching and listening. And we will speak to you all next week.